Another great interview segment from the Racing Insiders Show.
But let's get right to the United Sports Car Championship. We've got John Dagys, Sports Car 365, who's going to join us. We've had 2 rounds of testing, learned a lot, learned an awful lot. In fact, that some of the cars that had problems were told not to go back on the track anymore. John, what's happened since that session in Daytona?
Well, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of negotiation, a lot of meetings going on behind the doors between at IMSA and Continental Tire and other parties right now, because there's a lot of question marks surrounding what happened to these Daytona prototypes in that test at Daytona. Obviously, we saw Richard Westbrook have a massive accident in the first day at Daytona. A suspected right rear tire failure sent the car backwards up into the air, almost over the catch fence, and barrel rolling, landed and rolled multiple times before coming to rest. And then later that day, Joao Barbosa in the Action Express Corvette had a similar accident, but luckily he didn't go completely over. So, they ended up parking all of the Daytona prototypes, all of the PC cars, and all of the DPs and the P2s as well the following day, because they weren't really sure what caused the tire failures. And now it's a case of Continental working with IMSA and everybody else and trying to come to the bottom of the solution, to try to find a solution before the next testing begins, a private testing later this month, and even heading into the Roar before the 24 in January.
And John, I have some very deep friends at Continental, but I have to wonder why Continental, they admitted to bringing the same tire to these tests with a car that has more power and more downforce. You have to wonder about the thinking on that.
Well, I think they were going with what they had, what was tried and trusted. Obviously Daytona is a very unique racetrack in terms of tire development, and we've seen the same thing at Indianapolis with, it's a big challenge for tire manufacturers to actually make a perfect tire and then compound in construction. And this tire worked successfully for Continental for the last 2 years at Daytona, no problems at all. And I think that they were just going there to see what they can achieve with that. It's a DPI tire, which got rebranded as a P1000 for 2014. And we've seen other tire manufacturers have issues at Daytona as well. Pirelli, the most recent tire partner for Grand Am before Continental, they had a series of blowouts as well. So, I think we can be quick to blame the tires, but I think there's more issues surrounding this right now as well.
Hey, John, I've said all along that I personally don't think the matchup between a DP car and a P2 car is going to work. With all the problems now, has there been any talk about maybe splitting those classes back up and slowing the DP cars back down?
I haven't heard anything in regards to that just yet, but there's obviously been a lot of talk about that. P2s struggled big time at Daytona. It was actually the opposite problem they had of the DPs. DPs had high tire temperatures, particularly on the right side of the car. The P2s, meanwhile, didn't have hardly any tire temperature on all 4 corners of the car. They couldn't get any heat in the tires because there wasn't as much load. The cars aren't as heavy as the DPs. So, Extreme Speed Motorsports is really the only benchmark there. There was only 2 P2s, them and the Libra Radical Ford, and Libra has been a hit or miss entry over the years in the ALMS. So lap time wise, I think the ESM was about 3 or 4 seconds off the pace, which is a considerable amount right now. So we'll have to see what happens. I was speaking to a lot of the ESM guys during the test, and they were pretty discouraged. They were going to try a larger restrictor on the second day, but ultimately never got that opportunity when the series decided to park all the prototypes.
John Dagys, Sports Car 365. You and I shared some quick emails this week. I saw some images on your website that kind of reminded me of maybe a problem with the new aero devices, the new wing and the new diffuser, and how it just appeared to me, I'm not a race engineer, but it appeared to me that when the car gets turned around after a spin or something at high speed, that it's likely to get airborne because it looks like it was just ready for liftoff. Is any of this being investigated?
Yeah, and that's another part that's being investigated as well, as you point out. I think that's the most concerning factor right now we have, is that these cars are taking off and catching air. And anytime that happens, whether it's NASCAR, whether it's sports cars within like LMP1 cars we've seen at Le Mans, Indy cars, etc., it always ends bad. And that's actually, something that IMSA has to look at right now. I know I spoke with Scott Elkins the day after the incidents, and he said they were on the phone all the night before, talking with aerodynamicists and the engineering firms they've contracted to help with this new aero kit. They're not absolutely sure it's due to the new parts on the car. It could just be a combination of the two, or maybe just unrelated altogether. But I think it's something that they have to get sorted out before we put more lives at risk when these guys go back out there for further testing and the race itself.
John, give me some impressions of, you were there, you heard the cars, you heard the drivers. What was it like?
It was pretty interesting. A lot of the focus was obviously on the DP and the P2 integration and how those cars are going to balance out. But we saw a lot of GT cars as well, not just GT Le Mans cars, but also GT Daytona. There were close to 20 cars at the Daytona test alone, and that brought up a lot of questions of who's going to get an entry, who isn't. And I know we spoke about this on a previous episode, of the car caps and everything, but I think that brought out more questions than not. Another thing that was a big topic was just the pure speeds. The GT Le Mans cars were really close to the DP and the P2s at Daytona. The GT Daytonas were not that far off either. So I think IMSA is going to have a good look at how to separate the different classes and make sure that everybody has a good separation in speeds, because everybody all clumped together, especially at a place like Daytona, is going to cause a lot of havoc.
Looking at the GT classes, the growth has been amazing in those classes. They did limit the entries, which I think is more of a marketing thing. Are they really going to turn down GT teams this year to race?
Well, there's a physical capacity for some tracks we'll be going to. Like Daytona has a capacity of 60. Sebring has a capacity of 63. I think the Watkins Glen might be about the same. And there's other tracks with obviously a lot less. And that all comes down to pit lane capacity. They don't want to be double pitting a lot of these cars for safety reasons. So IMSA already laid out how many cars can be at each venue, and I think they're going to have to go according to that. Obviously Daytona is going to have close to 70, 80 entries, I'm sure. Whether they all get a spot, I'm pretty sure they won't. I think we'll see the capacity right down to 60, and it's a case of a lot of GT Daytona teams might be getting turned away. Other classes as well. We're not really sure on the exact makeup of the prototype category. I think there's 18 or 19 that were allocated for Daytona. My count is there might only be about 14 or 15 full season entries at best. So there might be a couple entries there to give the GT Daytona. There might be a couple entries from GT Le Mans, which was capped at 12 provisionally. I think might only be 10 or 11 at Daytona. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to see some changes in the car capacity guidelines. And unfortunately, there's about 25, 26 GT Daytona cars by my count that are actually prepared to run full seasons. And I don't think they're all going to get a space.
John, I'm going to ask you a question. You're a journalist. You've covered sports car racing all over the world. You've been in paddocks from one hemisphere to the other. I'm going to ask you to put on an analyst hat right now. Can this work? Will this be painful making it work this year in the United Sports Car Championship?
It's going to be a challenging year for sure, and I think that was exemplified by this test this past week. With seeing the accidents and obviously looking at the speed differentials between the P2 and the DP cars. I think everybody knew it was going to be hard, but I think it's starting to become a little more of a reality now that everybody's on track and testing and really seeing it for the first time. IMSA has a huge road ahead of themselves, and we could always just hope that they're going to do the best job they can for 2014. I think what we really have to look forward to is 2015, 2016, and beyond, when all the rules and regulations are nailed down and potentially a new class of prototypes are introduced in America. And I think that'll really set the bar to the next level in sports car racing in North America.
It's amazing. We're still 2 months away before the Rolex 24 or the Daytona 24 hours. A lot of testing is due to happen. Still got the holidays in there. A lot has to go on in the next 60, 70 days. John Dagys, thank you. It's a lot of meat to chew on, but it's eating time. It's the eating holiday. John, thanks.
Thanks for having me on.
The Racing Insiders on MAV TV every Thursday at 2 and 5 o'clock Eastern, and again on Saturdays at 12:30 midday.
It's the season of giving. So before we go to our next segment, let's talk about your investment in us and our investment in you, how we give to each other through the Racing Insiders. Go to our Indiegogo page, our crowdfunding page, and you'll get a chance to participate in gifts from our marketing partners, including GoPro cameras, fan experiences at the Tudor United Sports Car Championship, and the Pirelli World Challenge. This is with the Mazda Owners Group, iRacing memberships, and gifts from TrackMate. There's many more there. So go to theracinginsiders.com/Indiegogo. Participate in an investment in your favorite sports car racing show.